Hello, this is Colerain Township.
Hello, and welcome to Colerain Communicator. I'm Jason Grzgorek. Winter may be hibernation time for all of us, but for the township, it's never a dull moment. And of course, zoning is one of our important issues that we'd like to focus again this month in February's edition of Colerain Communicator. So with that, I of course bring Jeff Mills back to our table to discuss the new changes that are going on in zoning. You know, code enforcement.
Code enforcement.
That is the new buzz. I guess we could say buzzword for this month. Change is going to happen.
Yes.
And as we said earlier, change is important. But what was the means to change? I mean, what was wrong with the old system that desperately needs some looking at?
Some tweaking. Well,
yes.
So okay. So the beginning is always a great place to start.
It is.
Right?
That's what I heard.
Yeah. So starting at the beginning, I mean, we have my office, the Department of Planning and Zoning, has three things that it does. It does long-range planning. It does short-term planning, which means permits and zoning certificates, things like that. And it has code enforcement as one of its core competencies. That's one of the things that we do. Code enforcement. There are lots of different philosophies of how to approach code enforcement. Of course, my philosophy of how to approach this code enforcement is. You have to focus on outcomes. Okay, so we can churn out, we can send people out 24/7 and write notices of violation all day. But if it doesn't affect outcomes at the end of the day, then I don't believe it's a successful program. So we've attempted to over time maximize the change in outcomes, and the outcomes that we're looking for are. That's
a good point. What are we looking for?
We're looking for compliance with our zoning, with our property maintenance, with nuisance. So those are the three big laws that we enforce in our department. So nuisance laws relate to tall weeds and grass and trash and debris. And that's an Ohio Revised Code law that we enforce. We have our township zoning resolution, which talks about, it's wide-ranging, of course. It's 200 and something pages, so I'm not going to tell you everything that it does. But the big things that you would see as you're driving through Colerain Township are signs on Colerain Avenue.
And I know that's the big issue right now.
Drives me crazy because we don't want the Colerain Avenue corridor to look like a circus. I mean, what we want it to very accurately reflect our priorities and we want it to accurately depict Colerain Township as a great community to shop and do business in. So what we're trying to accomplish is the elimination of all of those temporary signs that get thrown out into the right-of-way oftentimes.
Well, it's that idea of trash.
Right.
Not only do they usually not look that great, but then at some point weather is going to deteriorate them,
right.
And they get blown around, and
yes.
who's responsible?
That's
the
right.
person. It's off their lawn. They don't care.
I know. And so what we hear a lot from business owners is it's hard to get seen and recognized and have people understand where our businesses are. And I'm very sympathetic to that argument. I just don't believe that the answer to that problem is to scream louder. So I feel like everybody's screaming,
Sure.
But when everybody's screaming, nobody can hear anything.
Exactly.
So I say let's turn the volume down across the board, and then you won't need to stand out so much to get recognized. Okay, so oftentimes we see those snipe signs. We see the signs that say, we'll buy your home any condition, cash paid, with no name associated with it. We're going to be focusing our efforts again this year, as we did last year.
Right.
But this year we're making some tweaks and modifications to the process that hopefully will affect the outcomes and clean up a lot of the clutter that we see, specifically in Colerain Avenue corridor. So now, staffing has been an issue. As you know, townships throughout the state have been hit hard by the estate tax, the local government fund. We tried recently to pass the JED, which would have generated revenue for infrastructure improvements in Colerain Avenue. That was unsuccessful. So ultimately, we're having to deal with staffing issues, and so we're getting creative. Sure. We're trying to, as an organization at Colerain Township, we're trying to break down, I know it's very cliche, but break down silos.
No, and I actually used that recently in our last talking with Colerain Township with Mr. Rowan here, that I said, I have always thought that that was the best depiction that you had brought up into your PowerPoint presentation at the beginning of last year, was taking that idea of silos and removing that, because you are one unified unit. And I think that has always been very resonant in my mind.
That's right. It's Team Colerain. You know, it's not the police department. It's not the fire department. It's not public works. It's not parks. It's not. It's we're all trying to achieve the same mission, which is to make Colerain Township a best-in-class community.
Absolutely.
And so and there are an incredible amount of synergies that can be realized when you start to stop assigning tasks to just this one little department or and start to spread responsibility for making Colerain Township a better place and a best-in-class community across departments. So with that in mind, given the context within which the police department operates, which is, they have a philosophy of community-oriented policing.
Right.
Which means establishing relationships with the community. It's not all about, responding to a burglary or responding to this or responding to that. It's about creating a relationship with the community within which the community feels comfortable with the police feel comfortable, and you can start to achieve better crime reduction outcomes through this sort of philosophy. So what the police department sees, that having been said, we have, last year we had a police officer that was assigned 50% of his time to the code enforcement function. Okay, and that worked out well. Officer Frandoni did a fantastic job. But as the police department furthers its commitment to community-oriented policing, they see an opportunity to get more police officers involved and to actually incorporate some of the code enforcement function into the duties and responsibilities of more police officers, patrol officers.
So as you're looking, obviously you had one person doing a very large span.
Right.
Now you're looking at quite possibly utilizing a force that's already out on the beat.
That's right.
To cover those areas.
And while they go in and talk with businesses or talk with residents about maybe potential violations, or they're building relationships. Now that business or that resident knows Officer so and so, and hopefully walks away with a good experience. So now we have a community-oriented policing squad that's going to be sort of the locus of this activity, and Sergeant Woods is sort of in charge of that squad. And we've modified our zoning resolution, and we've modified our process to achieve better outcomes. And so last year what we saw, let me walk you through the process that was last year. Last year what you saw was you would have a violation. Officer Frandoni would go out and he would issue a notice of violation to the offending owner. And we would come back 21 days later and issue a final notice that says, okay. And then we'd come back 21 days later, and if it was still out there, now mind you, this is 6 weeks after.
I was going to say, at this point, you're a month and a half out.
Exactly.
Why you wouldn't take care of it is beyond me. But
maybe
that's how people are.
Sometimes,
I understand.
Yeah, sometimes it's whatever. For whatever reason, they just won't do it or don't want to do it. And then after 6 weeks, now our only means of recourse is to file basically a complaint in court, a lawsuit in Hamilton County Municipal Court, which requires putting together a complaint, a summons, and an affidavit. And when you think about the volume of enforcement complaints that we have, that is an enormously time-consuming and resource-intensive way to handle this.
Well, and I think that's also you also don't want to reach that ultimate goal anyway. Again, you're looking at building communication and building rapport with your citizens and your businesses, and you're doing that, and you're having to find them. That's not looking good, but I mean, I understand you have to take responsibility with what you're doing. So I understand the give and take on that. So
now,
but it's time-consuming.
It's very time-consuming, very resource-intensive. And so where we're at now is we have this squad of police officers who's going to be assuming responsibility for this. they will be out in the community and have started as of last week even, going out especially on businesses on Colerain Avenue, and talking with the business owners and educating them again about what is allowed and what is not allowed. Okay, so last year we sent a mailing to every business owner from Struble to Burnside on Colerain Avenue and said, hey, and nice little trifold, these are the signs that are permitted, these are the signs that are not.
The do's and don'ts.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Education campaign.
Sure.
All right, and then last year we followed that up a couple weeks later with a blitz where we started on one side of Colerain and went all the way up to the top and issued notices of violation. And what we saw, that was last February, we saw a huge reduction in the number of temporary signs, but it only lasted for 2 months, 3 months. And then they were back out and sort of back to business as usual.
Do you think it was more, I don't want to call it this, but it's the only thing that comes to really mind, is, do you think it was like a testing? Like,
right.
Are you really going to enforce this? But
I know.
I mean,
right.
It's the only way it looks like.
It feels like that sometimes.
Sure.
It feels like that. And so this year, the way we're going to approach things, we have changed our zoning resolution to clarify that a violation of the zoning resolution and our property maintenance resolution is actually a criminal offense.
Okay.
It's a minor misdemeanor offense. And minor misdemeanors, a lot like a speeding ticket. If you get a speeding ticket, you're going to get a minor misdemeanor citation, and it's going to have a payout, $130 or whatever, or you can go to court, and here's your court date. So you can either go down to the courthouse and pay it out, or you can show up on this date, and that's your court date. And so that's the direction we're moving into with zoning. So now, we've got officers out building relationships, but at the end of the day, if you have a business owner or a resident that just will not comply with the zoning resolution or with the property maintenance resolution, then there's no other alternative. And we want to make sure that getting the outcome that we want, which is compliance with the zoning resolution, happens with the minimal, the most time effective, the most resource effective and efficient way possible. So this year, the way it's going to work is officers will be out having conversations. When we see a violation, you'll get a notice of violation, and it says, what the violation is and how long you have to correct it. Okay. Then we go back out, and if it hasn't been corrected, then you just get a citation. Okay. It's a ticket. It's a ticket that is a $130 ticket.
We're not waiting another 21
There's
days.
No more
to
21
do,
days,
okay.
Right? Yeah, because I felt like those. I don't know if they were being used to line pet cages or what these final notices.
Sure.
But if you look at the effectiveness of those final notices, we weren't getting. If somebody was going to fix the problem, they would have done it in that first period. The final notice was not helping anything.
No.
It was just extending the period of time. And so I think that with this, hopefully it'll provide an incentive to correct the issue, and it'll allow us to marshal our resources in a much more efficient way.
Well, it looks like you're corralling it. Again, you're cutting off another 21 days. Is the first, when you said that you say, let's say it's a vacant structure, is that different than, say, trash and debris? Is that day different, the time period different, or is that the same? Or
right. So with grass and trash, those are nuisances, and the process with those is a little bit different. The process with those is if your grass gets to be above 12 inches tall, and either a police officer notices it as they're out on the beat, or we get a complaint from someone in the neighborhood, we'll go out and we'll post the property with a bright orange sticker that says, you have 7 days to cut your grass. Now, keep in mind,
it's like the scarlet letter of lawns.
Right. I know, right. So, but keep in mind, at this point, the grass is 12 inches tall, and how long does it take to get 12 inches tall?
Correct. It's a pretty lengthy time, unless it's a very wet season.
Right,
but at the same time, if you have let your grass go up to 12 inches,
that's right.
I'm sorry.
Right.
Obviously, something's going on.
Right. And so we get out and we post it. Then we come back, giving you at least 7 days to have cut the grass.
That's fair.
Right. And then it has to go on to a trustee resolution, and then the trustees approve a resolution every month that says, we now give our public works guys the authority to go abate the nuisance, cut the grass, or pick up all the trash in the yard and take it to Rumpke or whatever. So, so that process is going to remain the same.
Okay.
So yeah.
But which is interesting that you bring up that that the township will take care of that issue. If I were to hear that, I'd be like, okay, well, it sounds like the township's going to be cutting my grass.
Oh.
I hope that's not the case, because obviously, first of all, I wouldn't want that orange sticker if I
On your
were a
property,
resident. I
right.
wouldn't want that on my property, because to me that sets a stigma.
Right.
And
Sure.
and I think again we're looking at trying to build and complete that best-in-class community
Absolutely.
where everyone should comply. I would hope that would do that. Do you think that, I don't want to call it it's not very, I don't want to call it a scare tactic, but I mean, it is putting fear and putting responsibility into that. But how do you, if, say for example, to me, if Public Works would come and cut
Yeah.
my grass, I'd be like, I'd feel kind of useless, because that's
Right.
my job,
Right.
that's my
Sure.
home.
Sure.
So they come, they take care of it.
Yes.
How often is that going to happen before you say, you know what, come on,
Right. I know. Well,
pick up your responsibility?
it's a gentle nudge to remind folks that 12-inch tall grass is not in keeping with the shared vision that we all have in Colerain Township, the shared understanding that you need to maintain your property. And in some cases, it's a situation where the property is vacant. We're hoping to address those, and we are continuing to work on the vacant building maintenance license, vacant foreclosed property registry, as we build up this universe of data that is who is responsible for that vacant house. Then we can reach out to the responsible owner, whether they're in Cincinnati, in Colerain Township, or in South Dakota. We'll be able to reach out to them and say, hey, you need to continue to maintain. But at the end of the day, if you just refuse to cut your grass, it's very clear to me that that's not the most cost-effective way to cut your grass, because we have we've got a team of guys that are going to go out, and I think that they're billing at $100 an hour, and there's an administrative fee that is placed on top of that for all of the paperwork that we have to go through to assess the property with the Hamilton County assessors, and that's a $350 fee. So it just makes so much more sense to maintain your own property.
Right. I would assume that, again, that's just looking at the residential side. You're also looking at that commercial side of it as well. As time goes on, how do you feel? I mean, obviously, you're not going to be putting orange stickers on their side for bad sign. I shouldn't say bad sign.
Sure.
I mean,
I know
that's
what you mean.
subjective.
Sure,
But no, I mean the stationary signs and things like that. How will you deal with that in regards? Is that more of the communique between your new squad and the business, or how is that going to work?
Sure. Well, it's about setting expectations and being very clear about what our expectations are, and we write down our expectations in the zoning resolution. Okay, so we have a list of prohibited sign types, and that would include the feather flags. That would include the signs that you just sort of stick out. They almost look like the political signs, but they have a commercial message
let's call
on
them
them.
like a
lawn
sign
or something.
Yeah.
Yes. The pennants, the banners, the dancing men, and then you've got the human signs, which are the folks that
just sit out there and
dress
wave.
up.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, those things are very distracting. And in some cases, they actually are in the street, trying to get your attention, because that's their job, is to get your attention on their message, which is their business, and to hopefully drive business in there. And I guess that when all of that happens in a very specific area like Colerain Avenue, it just lends itself to a negative image. That it starts to develop, maybe a run-down kind of image. So
I think you're hitting the right adjectives to that. I mean, it's not what you want to see. You want to be invited to shop. And quite frankly, if I'm being bombarded with, again, the dancing men, the people standing out there waving a sign, I don't want to stop. You're not telling me. You're telling me who you are, sure, but it's not the invite that you really want. And with as many things as that are coming, especially with the new gateway sign off of 275, the way Colerain Avenue is now shaping up, starting with Stone Creek, going all the way down. You want that invitation. You want to feel welcome, that you could start from the top of Colerain Avenue and go all the way down Colerain Avenue through Colerain and go at any point and feel comfortable.
Right. That's right. And when new businesses come in to the corridor, we're we welcome them. We do everything that we can to ensure their success, to the extent that we have that capability. But we also set expectations very early. So, for example, when Dunkin' Donuts and Popeyes, when the Gilligan Oil Company redid that, they wanted to have grand opening banners and everything.
Oh, I'm sure.
And
balloons and
right,
fanfare, I'm
right.
sure.
And so, and there are some temporary signs that are available legally to put up to say, hey, we're open and come on in, and construction's over. But it's not, with all the balloons and all the feather flags and blade signs and things like that. So when we have that conversation with them, they say, yes, but look at over there and look at over there. And so, we want, and with Kroger coming on, Kroger Marketplace is set to go to Zoning Commission on the 17th of February.
Right.
And, once, hopefully they'll be able to work out any issues that they might have at that meeting, and we'll be able to get that approved and start moving forward with a major redevelopment of our Main and Main intersection. We want folks to understand that everybody's playing by the same rules. And this is an expectation of you, Dunkin' Donuts, and there's also an expectation of you, Kroger's, and they're being very good business partners in the community, but there are other actors that just aren't. There are other businesses that just haven't been. And so it's a shared expectation. Everybody is going to be treated equally. And so I'm confident that this is going to really help change outcomes this year.
If we were to stare into the crystal ball because I do want to touch on a few things, and we're getting close to low time, but I want to take a look at the crystal ball question as always. If we were to, when we come back next February, when we've gone through a full year cycle of this, what is your expectation? What do you think we would talk about when it comes to code enforcement next year? Do you think it's going to be as heavily weighted, or do you think we are going to... In my mind, I don't think we're going to have the Coca-Cola I'd like to teach the world to sing kind of handshake, but at least it would become closer to a compliance with everyone at that point?
Sure, and that's what I'm hoping. So, we've, as we've cycled through different staffing scenarios and different personnel situations, when I first started, we had a very different code enforcement model than we did last year. Last year was, and this year is very different from last year. I think that we're getting to the point now where we have something that we can run with and we can continue to work. And so next year when we come to talk, we'll be talking about how we worked all the kinks out in early 2015 and how, towards the middle of summertime, everything was flowing like a well-oiled machine, and we have great compliance, and everybody's much happier with the way Colerain Avenue looks.
I like the way that sounds. Well, we are running low, and I want to give the last 5 minutes for some updates. Obviously, John Rose is still going strong. Where are we in that project?
Sure. So last week, we completed the parcel assemblage. There were many properties that needed to be purchased and assembled and transitioned to just one owner. That was complicated very much by the fact that one of the properties was owned by the DEA and U.S. Marshals as a part of a seizure, a drug seizure. There was another building that had 2 mortgages and maybe a student loan lien on it. So so in order to get these properties, we had to have all of the mortgagors clear the liens. They had to release all of these liens, and so it's a very complex undertaking. We were able to finish all of that, and we now have the last 5 parcels are now under contract to be sold to CMHA.
Great.
This weekend, CMHA will be submitting its low-income housing tax credit application to their expediters, and it will be submitted for review by OFA next week, and we should hear by the end of May or early June whether or not that low-income housing tax credit application has been awarded, and that's very important because it's a key piece to the financing of the project.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
But I don't know if we've shared on this program some of the renderings of the new project.
We haven't yet, no.
Okay, but well, the initial renderings have been modified and in such a fantastic way. I mean, this building is going to look phenomenal. It's We now have, the walking paths sort of laid out. We have the raised bed garden area sorted, and the building itself just looks phenomenal. So that's going to be an incredible amount of reinvestment in an area that could certainly use it. So.
It sounds like, again, we were like when we had talked the last time that you're working at taking neighborhoods and making them bright spots
That's
again,
right.
and what a great way to start that.
Yes, and let me tell you, just this building, a hole hasn't been dug yet for this building, right? We just assembled all of the properties, but since all the demolition, we have Mr. Jim Eckhoff has made major improvements on his building, which is on John Rose. We have Cincinnati Mine and Machinery that's looking to expand their operation, which is a business that's been in Colerain since the 40s and continues to be a world leader in what they do. And then we have the Builder's First Source property that is looking to transition ownership for the first time in a very, very long time, and that will produce incredible opportunities for further redevelopment of Groesbeck and John Rose, and that's in the medium term. In the short term, we'll be able to get rid of that nasty sign that's been abandoned for forever, screaming, disinvestment. Now that sign will come down in the near future, and brighter days are ahead for Groesbeck. Continued, and the school district is now continuing to explore its options for consolidating elementary schools at Struble Elementary on John Rose, whereas before that
it wasn't even in the question.
That was not right, and that wasn't. This project wasn't the only criteria that the school district took into consideration, but it certainly was. Certainly played a role.
Well, it has obviously played a larger role now that it's
right.
finally seeing that this is actually going to happen.
That's
it makes a more attractive beacon to join that area.
And it's exciting. I mean, that is exciting. That's exciting stuff.
It is exciting. Yeah. And as much as we always say, you and I could sit here and talk lot of investment and reinvestment in the Colerain corridor a lot. We're actually down to our bottom of our time. So we are definitely having you back because Dan will always say, hey, bring Jeff back on. That's great. Jeff, thank you for coming to tell us about all the great new news that's coming out.
It's my pleasure.
On the area, and
my
I appreciate
pleasure.
it. Of course, I want to thank all of you for joining us as well. This has been Colerain Communicator, because Colerain County is always one from home. Thank you. Have a great evening.